It's football. I've been watching it for 40 years.
Are you kidding me?
You're listening to Winning Cures Everything.
Game day, baby. Wake up or get out.
Here's your host,
a confident young man, a superb athlete,
Gary Seegers.
All right, let's get to it. It is Thursday, January the 30th. This is Winning Cures Everything. It is a college football podcast. I'm your host, Gary Seegers, at Gary WCE on all the socials, most active on X, of course. You guys know that. So far, so good with the scheduled live streams, Mondays and Thursdays, 6 p.m. Eastern time. If you missed that on Monday, of course, my plan is to go live every Monday and Thursday. I know it's not the perfect time for everybody, but it is when I can be the most consistent and make sure that I am on a good schedule. So I want you guys to be a part of the show. So if you are here, go ahead and hop in the chat. You got any thoughts, any questions? I'm going to read them. I'm going to answer those throughout the show. As always, you guys should know super chats are going to get the first dibs. But we're going to make this very easy today. I've got multiple things that need to be talked about. And I wasn't planning on opening with this, but it broke about 2 hours ago. I've been pretty inundated with it since I read it. So I'm going to start off with this one. And the Big Ten is exploring private equity. So let's go ahead and get into it. The Big Ten, of course, college football's biggest financial powerhouse. They are potentially dipping their toes into private equity. Yes, that is the same conference that recently locked in a $7 billion TV deal. They are now exploring new ways to bring in even more money. And they've hired investment bank Evercore to shop the conference around to private investors. Now, this is a big shift, right? Just a few months ago, Big Ten Commissioner Tony Petitti, he was openly skeptical about, private equity in college sports and whatnot. But now, I mean, the league is taking bids. They're evaluating potential investments. They're considering outside money to help enhance, conference business endeavors or whatever that means. So let's talk about what's changed. So let's break this down. First off, why private equity and why now? The Big Ten, let's not kid ourselves. They're not hurting for cash. Right, the conference brought in $880 million in revenue in 2023. And, this past year, they bring in USC, UCLA, Oregon, and Washington. Those numbers are only going to go up, right? So here's the issue. College sports is changing very quickly. The House versus NCAA antitrust lawsuit that's going to end up forcing schools to, share revenue with athletes. It's up to $20.5 million per year per school. That money's got to come from somewhere. And even the biggest conferences are looking for ways to, what's the right way to say this? Increase their financial flexibility, right? Because even at 20.5 for the entire athletic department, we're still trying to figure out, okay, can we bring in more from outside to pay more than what that big number is? How are we supposed to keep up with these other schools? Like Texas is going to pay an astronomical amount of money for a football roster. Some of that money's got to go to other sports as well. How do you keep up, right? Florida State was the first school that seriously explored private equity, and they held talks with 6th Street and Arctos Partners back in 2022. So I'm trying to check my notes here. The Big 12 followed suit. They considered a deal worth up to $1 billion, and that was for a 15 to 20% ownership stake in the conference. And now, of course, the Big 10 doing their thing. It may make no mistake, like this could be a huge game changer. The Big Ten and the SEC have already started positioning themselves as the two dominant forces in college athletics. They held a private summit last October in Nashville to discuss some strategies, long-term strategies. Next month, we already talked about this, but they are set to meet again in New Orleans, like we talked about on the Monday, January 27th show. There is also the growing concept of, and we've talked about this a lot, the College Football Super League. Right, some former Disney executives have been pushing Project Rudy, which is a proposal for a 70-team breakaway league, and that would be infused with up to $9 billion in private capital. Petitti dismissed the idea. He said the Big Ten and the SEC can handle things on their own, but let's be real here. Money talks, and the possibility of a true, NFL-style Super League is inching closer. Now, at the same time, another group called College Sports Tomorrow. And they feature like some big names, right? They got the Sixers and the Devils owner, David Blitzer, Browns owner, Jimmy Haslam, and NFL executive Brian Rolap. They've been pushing a similar model, right? Their idea is basically a centralized media rights entity that is going to pool broadcast deals across multiple conferences and increase revenue while also allowing direct payments to athletes. Like all of this stuff just effectively kills the NCAA. And what it's done at this point, even though nothing has started, it's put the college sports financial arms race into overdrive. So let's talk about what's next for the Big Ten, right? They're not rushing into anything yet. This is the first round of bids from private equity firms. It's just exploratory, but the fact that they're even talking about bids tells us, that the conference is preparing for a major shift in how the money flows through college football right now. You got a new media rights deal. You got increased financial pressures. You got ongoing talks with the SEC. Kind of seems to me like the Big Ten is positioning itself to lead in the next phase of college football's evolution, right? Now, whether that means accepting private equity money, joining forces with the SEC on scheduling, non-conference games and packaging it and selling it to a TV network, or, as we just talked about, eventually pushing towards a Super League-style breakaway, one thing's pretty clear, and that is the future of college football is being decided really behind these closed doors. And the Big Ten is absolutely going to make sure that it's got a spot at the head of the table. Now, let's move on to our next topic here. For what I planned on opening the show with, and this is news that broke this morning, ESPN extended the ACC TV deal. So the conference's future appears to be set for now, but there are changes that are coming. So let's go ahead and get into it. The ACC locked in its future, at least on paper with this. ESPN did exercise their option to extend the media rights deal with the conference through 2036, and it gives the league some much-needed stability. But the question, I think, is does it actually fix anything, or does it just delay the inevitable? Right? ESPN had the exclusive right to renew the deal with the ACC. They pulled the trigger. The league didn't really have a choice. It was not a network, or it was a network decision. It wasn't a conference negotiation. But now they did discuss some changes, partially with scheduling, and we'll talk about in a bit what the Notre Dame part of this looks like too. But let's not get it twisted. This is good for the ACC. Had ESPN declined, this contract would have ended in 2027. It would have left the ACC wide open for realignment chaos. Instead, the deal is extended, but there is a problem, and that is that it does not add any more money. The ACC, they are still locked into a below-market TV contract compared to the Big Two, which are the SEC and the Big Ten. The financial gap is not shrinking. If anything, it gets worse as these new media deals get signed elsewhere. So while the extension keeps the conference intact, it doesn't solve the root issue of falling behind in revenue. Now, the biggest storyline, I think, from this is what happens with Florida State and Clemson. These two have been suing the ACC for over a year. They've been looking for ways to break free from what was supposedly the ironclad grant of rights. But with this extension and whatnot, it looks like they might be sticking around after all. And the reason behind that is because there's nowhere to go. The SEC already owns Florida and South Carolina, so there's no urgency for ESPN to push for expansion there. The Big Ten would need over $100 million per year in additional TV revenue to justify adding new schools. And I don't think Fox and NBC are going to be willing to pay that. So rather than trying to force their way out, Florida State and Clemson are just negotiating a financial compromise. And that's one that would reduce exit penalties after 2031 and create a new revenue distribution model that benefits the ACC's biggest brands. So the ACC is finally going to do, it appears, what Florida State and Clemson have been asking for the whole time, and that is to shift the revenue model to reward the top programs. And here's how they're going to do it. They're going to call it a brand fund, right? We're gonna put that in quotes, and it's going to funnel extra TV money to the schools that generate the most eyeballs, right? And of course, the biggest beneficiaries there are going to be Florida State, Clemson, Miami, and North Carolina. This comes on top of the Success Initiative, right? That whole thing that was done, and basically that's payouts that reward teams for making the playoff and different bowl games, stuff like that. If the system works as intended, the top ACC schools could shrink that financial gap with the SEC and the Big Ten to, maybe just a few million per year. This isn't perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but it is better than the previous model where everyone got the same cut no matter what their value was. So, and of course, years and years ago, I mean, this is kind of what led to a lot of realignment in the sport. But now it almost seems to make a little more sense to, hey, let's give Florida State and Clemson and Miami, et cetera, some more money so that they don't leave us in the dark like what happened with the Oregon State and Washington. Either way. So tell me, how about this? This is why it's happening. Like the programs that don't bring in the eyeballs, your Boston College, Syracuse, Wake Forest, et cetera, like they saw what happened in the Pac-12. They do not want that same situation to happen to them. Like currently, according to just basic average numbers with the media rights deal, ACC schools make around $38 million a year from their current media rights deal, along with their postseason payouts. If you are Boston College, would it be better for you to make $30 million a year while Florida State and Clemson make in the 40s? Or would you rather be like Oregon State, Washington State, and try and rebuild a conference and fight for $10 million a year? Like it just gets to basic math at that point. Like the equal revenue bubble has popped, and the biggest brands are going to get what they're worth, period. To give you another idea of the numbers, right? The ACC conference games, and I looked all this up last night. If we take out Notre Dame, you take out the conference championship game, just the ACC conference games averaged 1.34 million viewers per game during the regular season. If you take out Miami, Florida State, and Clemson, that number drops to 660,000. Like those three schools provided more than double the average viewership of the other 14 schools in the conference combined. Now, something that could help that are scheduling changes, right? The conference did discuss with ESPN some scheduling tweaks that could include more conference games on Thursday and Friday nights on ESPN. And in return, ESPN could guarantee the ACC more games will be played in, the more valuable TV windows. Last year, it felt like it was all SEC all the time. And when the ACC did have a game that was even somewhat attractive to a national audience, they usually got slotted at noon on ABC, competing with like Fox's Big Noon Kick or whatever it was, right? Or you would toss them on ESPN when you had a big SEC game at noon on ABC. Now, maybe you get a little, if you do Thursday and Friday so that Fox doesn't have a Friday night Big Ten game that is completely, uncontested, we'll say, other than like an AAC game that has drawn, the AAC can't draw flies to a gut wagon right now. I mean, it's terrible. We'll talk about that here in a little bit, but that is, if the ACC plays ball and agrees to do more Thursday and Friday night games, then ESPN has basically said, hey, we'll get you some more primetime opportunities if you're willing to do some stuff for us in the middle of the week. It's not ideal for some of these ACC schools. Everybody would love to play on Saturdays. Everybody wants to play like late afternoon on Saturday. You got time to get there. You got time to get home after. Like everybody, we all get this. But TV windows do exist for a reason. Let's talk about Notre Dame, right? They're playing a sneaky big role in all this. As part of the ESPN deal, Notre Dame is going to play more games against the ACC's top football brands, especially Clemson, Florida State, and Miami. They already play 5 to 6 ACC games per year. This further cements their ACC connection while also keeping their independence. Like ESPN gets more and more key matchups that boost the ACC value without requiring any kind of realignment. The ACC gets really premium inventory for its TV deal, and that makes the conference more stable. So while Notre Dame is not joining full-time, and I know that pisses some people off, the Irish are helping keep the ACC afloat by providing these big-time matchups. Right? The 4 rated games against ACC competition this year for Notre Dame, and the Louisville game was exclusively on Peacock, but Notre Dame averaged 1.9 million viewers against ACC competition. That was one game against Florida State, and then you had Stanford, Virginia, and Georgia Tech. I mean, those are not big games, but 1.9 million on average. I mean, that's huge. That's a massive audience for ACC schools. And when you pair them with Miami, Clemson, Florida State, the numbers soar even higher. So this deal is going to give us more of those big matchups. Let's be real. I mean, this buys the ACC time, but it does not. It it doesn't exactly fix the long-term problem. Even with brand-based payouts, the ACC schools are still going to make significantly less money than the SEC and Big Ten. The revenue gap is not going away. And when the next TV contract cycle hits in 2031, realignment talk is going to heat up all over again. The deal gives the ACC temporary stability, but it does not guarantee long-term survival. Florida State and Clemson are staying for now, but if the money isn't right in 5 or 6 years, we can expect this whole conversation to start all over again, because there is discussion with all the lawsuits that are going on and whatnot. Florida State and Clemson are going to stay in the league for now, or in the conference for now, but the buyout to leave the conference to get out of the grant of rights, they're going to redo that thing potentially to make it where it'll drop down around 2031 or 2032, which lines up with the end of the current CFP deal, the Big Ten deal, and the SEC TV deals, right? So this is big that it happened, but let's pump the brakes. Let's see exactly what happens with this. Let's go ahead and hit an ad, and on the other side, we're going to talk some conference expansion and a few other things on the other side. We're proudly supported by Go Sleeves, the best kinesiology technology on the market. Go Sleeves' patented compression sleeves, socks, and more increase blood flow and lymphatic flow to help your body recover, manage pain, and maintain peak performance. Right now, you can save 15% by going to gosleeves.com/WCE or by using the promo code WCE on their site. Go Sleeves. It's go time. All right, we move along to something that I don't think a lot of people are paying attention to, and that is the new Pac-12's next move, right? They're talking expansion, stability, survival at this point. I think that's the easiest way to say it. Let's talk about the Pac-12. This week, the Pac-12 athletic directors, they met for a 2-day summit at their conference headquarters. That is in San Ramon, California, and the focus is media rights and the expansion strategy. The league currently sitting at 7 football playing members. You got Oregon State, Washington State, and then you got the 5 Mountain West editions, and that's Boise State, Fresno, San Diego State, Colorado State, and Utah State. They've added Gonzaga for basketball and in the Olympic sports. So that does not solve the football problem, right? You need 8 schools to be recognized by the NCAA as a conference. You need that many to be able to get a bid into the playoff. So that's the way it goes. So let's talk Pac-12 expansion. Let's talk about who's on the radar. I see Toma 888 jumped in. He said Tide is rolling in baskets. Yes, Alabama looks good in basketball. Auburn looks better right now. Let's not be honest. Let's not kid ourselves here. The state of Alabama is looking good. So Pac-12 expansion. Who's on the radar? To make the scheduling work, the league does want to add at least one more football team. They have to in order to be recognized as a conference. But multiple ADs believe that 9 is the ideal number. That means 2 expansion candidates or 2 expansion additions, not just one. And according to John Canzano, the top targets being discussed include UNLV, which brings in the Las Vegas market, strong basketball program, regional potential for massive football growth there as well. I mean, they just hired Dan Mullen. It did really well just in the last couple of years. So Nevada would be the other one. And they're in Reno, rivalry with UNLV. If they do decide to bring in the Rebels, it helps build, a more stable regional footprint. Another expansion candidate, Memphis, strong basketball brand, really solid football program, major city market. It's a top 50 market. So is what it is. And then Tulane, a very respected academic institution, recent football success. They've got the New Orleans market as well. That's a massive media market also. Adding 2 of these teams, that would solidify football scheduling. You could have an 8-game conference schedule. It would be very easy, keep you from having to do a whole lot of non-conference scheduling, right? Now, the challenge is making sure that whoever they bring in would bring long-term value to the league. UNLV appears to be a perfect fit regionally. It's a massive market. They've got major boosters. They've made great hires. The program is certainly on the upswing. One of the biggest talking points right now is whether UNLV can even leave the Mountain West. Like, that's the problem. The Mountain West commissioner, Gloria Navarez, she came out and made claims that the 7 Mountain West schools, that includes UNLV, that they signed a grant of rights when they agreed to the conference's new media deal. Now, if that's true, it would mean UNLV is locked into the Mountain West unless they can negotiate some kind of an exit or challenge the legality of the agreement. But, there are some legal issues with Navarez's claim here. The new Mountain West media deal has not been signed yet. So no money has changed hands, which makes the legality of the grant of rights questionable, right? If UNLV argues that the Mountain West failed to deliver on their promised expansion efforts, because remember, they're sitting at 7 schools as well. Well, and I guess 8 would be Northern Illinois. So either way, if they can argue that the Mountain West did not deliver on what they promised, they could claim that they were misled, which would give them, somewhat of a legal avenue to be able to exit. But there's also a bigger picture here. Like, UNLV likely is not the only Mountain West school that's talking to the Pac-12. We brought up Reno, and New Mexico has also been rumored to be in discussions. That could mean an even bigger realignment shift. So if the Pac-12, if they decide to expand the footprint beyond the West Coast, the Memphis and Tulane make a lot of sense. But if they do take UNLV and Reno and even New Mexico, the Mountain West is in a lot of trouble because they have to, again, you have to be at 8 members. So we'll see exactly what ends up happening. And if you completely kill a conference, there's all kinds of litigation that goes into this. So let's talk about the Memphis-Tulane side of things. And I'll talk mostly on the Memphis side because that is the one that I'm the most familiar with, the one that I've done the most research on, the one that I know. Memphis and Tulane make sense for the Pac-12. If Memphis gets the call from the Pac-12, they need to pick up and say yes immediately. No thinking about it, no nothing, because fan engagement and TV viewership in the AAC is it's plummeting. Memphis football attendance in 2024 averaged less than 25,000 people per game. That is the lowest since 2012. This was an 11-2 team, and the fans still did not show up. Basketball attendance is down as well. The Tigers are averaging right now 11,925 tickets sold per game. That's lower than last year, even though the Tigers have a top 20 team, and they already had high-profile home matchups against Mississippi State, Ole Miss, and Missouri. On top of that, the TV ratings have just completely collapsed. Memphis averaged 424.6 thousand viewers per football game in 2024. That is down 56% from the previous season. That is the lowest viewership since 2014. Like, the AAC schedule is not fans, and it shows. Like, the Memphis home slate this past season was North Alabama, Troy, MTSU, North Texas, Charlotte, Rice, and UAB. There is zero national appeal in those games, and the only one that has any real appeal locally is UAB because it used to be a big rivalry game. None of those teams are very good. The North Texas game was a banger. It was great. The Charlotte game was great. It was very entertaining. Nobody cared because those programs do not operate on the same plane as Memphis. So a move to the Pac-12, that would instantly give Memphis better matchups. Like, imagine Memphis playing home games against Boise State, Fresno State, Washington State, Oregon State in football. In basketball, you get Gonzaga in here, San Diego State, Utah State. I mean, these are all top 25 programs. That's the kind of schedule that gets fans interested again. So as far as the Pac-12, they're not rushing into expansion, but we know that there are moves coming. They are going to have to add somebody. It needs at least one more football team. 2 or 3 could be in play. I think the most likely additions are probably UNLV and Nevada, but we got to figure out the legality of that. I wouldn't sleep on Memphis or Tulane if that Mountain West deal becomes an issue. For now, though, the Pac-12, the new look Pac-12, they are focused on generating stability and making sure that they survive, right? The longer they wait, the harder it's going to be to stay relevant in what is a rapidly changing college football landscape. Expansion, again, to reiterate, expansion is not just a possibility. They have to move to 8 football-playing schools in order to be recognized by the NCAA and by the CFP. So they're going to have to do this. They're going to add somebody. We got to keep watching what's going to end up happening. This happened the other day. We got to talk Michigan against the NCAA because this stuff broke yesterday, I believe it was. Michigan and the NCAA, this is the battle over sign stealing, the battle over level 1 violations, etc. Connor Stallions, or as Wetzel and company call them, Content Stallions. That's a fantastic game. He's the gift that just keeps on giving, right? The fight between Michigan and the NCAA over Connor Stallions and the whole sign stealing scandal, that's not cooling down. Like, it's just getting started. In the official response, Michigan didn't just deny the allegations. It came out swinging. I mean, it absolutely went after him. The university accused the NCAA of overreach, of exaggeration, of a lack of real evidence. They are making it clear that they are not negotiating. They're going to fight this. And at the center of the mess is, of course, Stallions. He's a former low-level Michigan staffer. He was accused of running an elaborate in-person scouting operation. The NCAA claims that Stallions and his network scouted 52 games in person over 3 years, and they violated rules against in-person sign stealing. Michigan said they ain't buying it. They argued that only one of those games was attended by Stallions himself. You had a handful of others that were attended by other staffers. The rest were friends and family. And the friends and family part is not illegal. As far as the infamous Stallions spy network, Michigan claims that there is no hard proof that coaches knew or even benefited from it. And then there's the twist, right? This is the crazy part. The original tipster came from inside Michigan's own campus, but there's not a name attached to it. The university is pushing for a pre-hearing to uncover the identity of the insider. And, look, confidential sources are pretty common in NCAA investigations. Michigan is arguing that the NCAA cannot build its case on anonymous tips alone, right? The NCAA is hammering Michigan over Sharon Moore's deleted text messages. The current head coach deleted all of the texts with Stallions on the same day that the NCAA investigation became public. Michigan says it wasn't a cover-up. Moore, they say, deleted the message. Well, he says deleted the messages out of, he was mad. He was frustrated. He was angry, not because he was hiding anything. And the recovered texts kind of prove it. Like, they mostly involved, prospect reminders, basic game talk kind of stuff. And you had some mentions of sign stealing, but there was no proof of in-person scouting. So basically, they recovered all the texts, and there legit was not anything damning in those. Personally, I'll tell you this. Even if you get mad, I don't go and delete text messages, not full conversations. That just seems kind of ridiculous to me. I think that this was a panic move more than it was an angry move, and I just realized that I did not switch those. I should have swapped the bottoms around. Regardless, what about Jim Harbaugh? The NCAA it's still going after him for failure to cooperate by not turning over his personal phone records before he left for the NFL. Michigan's defense is that the data was collected but was withheld due to privacy concerns. And meanwhile, the NCAA is also bringing up those past recruiting violations. They're alleging that Michigan failed to monitor its program, and the school just flatly denies that. It seems like the NCAA is trying to tie everything together, which in the past could have gotten the university in major, major trouble. Beyond Michigan's own scouting efforts, another revelation jumped up, and that was that Stallions was exchanging opponent signals with other programs. Michigan says they received signal plans for Michigan State and UNLV from Rutgers and Nebraska staffers, which proves something that we already knew, and that's that sign sharing is a common practice in college football. There's no NCAA violation there. Everyone steals signs. The only thing that's against the rules are in-person scouting by the staff. So what's next, right? Michigan's case is going to eventually head to the D1 Committee on Infractions, where they're going to decide on penalties and whatnot. The NCAA has not proposed specific punishments yet, but 6 of the 11 violations were classified as level 1. And that means that the consequences are potentially really serious. The good news for Michigan, Tennessee's already done this. Tennessee fought with the NCAA in 2023, and they avoided a postseason ban. All they got was a fine. Michigan's hoping for a similar outcome, I would imagine. Financial penalties, maybe some recruiting restrictions, which in this new NIL era is not really going to matter much. But so long as there's no shot at the playoff being taken away, it's really not that big of a deal, right? The battle is far from over. Like, Michigan isn't just defending itself, it's going after the NCAA's credibility. And, I mean, the whole college football world is going to watch this. Most of them do not believe the NCAA has any teeth anymore. This case could set the standard for how sign stealing, and among other things, are penalized moving forward. And I will tell you this, it is still early in the process. I would not expect a resolution on this anytime soon. So this is going to be fun to watch. It'll be fun to watch. Let's go on and do one more ad here, and then I want to close by talking about Notre Dame's new hire. I want to talk about declining attendance and all that, and then we will go ahead and get out of here. Tickets to everything are expensive these days, and I know you're like me. You want to catch a big game or a concert, maybe even tickets to a show. Why not save some money every time you buy tickets? Visit Ticketsmarter.com or use the TicketSmarter mobile app and use the promo code WCE10, that's WCE10, to save $10 on any order of $100 or more, or use WCE20, that's WCE20, to save $20 on an order of $300 or more. It's not a one-time sign-up bonus or anything. Seriously, every time you buy tickets, you can save money on already great deals. So do yourself a favor. Think smarter with TicketSmarter. All right, we carry on. Notre Dame has hired a new defensive coordinator. They hired Chris Ash as defensive coordinator, and what it means for the Irish. I mean, we can really get into this because I dug into this thing. He fills the vacancy left by Al Golden, right? Al Golden took the DC job with the Cincinnati Bengals. This is a hire that comes with a mix of experience, maybe some concerns, plenty of debate. I think most people agree that Ash is a good football mind, but there are some things that go with this. So what does the move mean for Notre Dame? Like, we can go ahead and break this thing down. Ash is no stranger to big-time college football. His resume does include stints as the DC at Wisconsin, at Arkansas, Ohio State, where he helped win the Buckeyes a national championship under Urban Meyer. He then became the head coach at Rutgers and was there from 2016 through 2019. Things did not exactly go well there. He became a DC a defensive coordinator at Texas in 2020. That was Tom Herman's last year. Most recently, he's been in the NFL. He spent time with the Jaguars and the Raiders in different coaching and scouting roles. He was a scout with the Jaguars just last year. At Wisconsin, his defenses were in the top 20 in scoring and total defenses. The unit didn't make any significant jumps under him. His year at Arkansas was a disaster, but I mean, that was a rebuilding program. It was, you get what happens. At Ohio State, the Buckeyes did see moderate improvement in his first year. They made a huge jump in year two. They finished second in the nation in scoring defense, and they helped Ohio State win the 2014 national title. His one season at Texas was a mess. That was the COVID year. They were installing a new system. They didn't really have an off season. I mean, there was all kind of reasons why things didn't go well. But since that year at Texas in the COVID season, he's been out of college football. He spent 3 years in the NFL. He hasn't been in a play calling role since 2020. So, I mean, let's be real. There's major question marks with this. His recent track record is not, it's not great, right? He's been fired from 4 of his last 5 jobs. Both of the NFL roles, the DC at Texas and the head coach at Rutgers. So that's not great. He hadn't been a DC in college in almost 5 years. The game has evolved. We don't know how much he's adapted to modern defensive schemes. His coaching style can be, it's a good word, polarizing, I guess. Like when he was at Rutgers and others, he kind of developed a reputation for not being the easiest dude to work with. We'll see if maybe being away from the college game has helped him in regards to that. Who knows? Recruiting was a big question mark. He's not known as a great recruiter. That's something that Notre Dame can't slip on, but I will admit that matters way less in this new era. Like, if you can coach ball, you can coach ball. They can get you players. But Marcus Freeman, he knew what he was getting himself into with this. This was not an out-of-nowhere decision. Freeman and Ash, they've coached against each other. It's very likely that Freeman values Ash's experience and his defensive IQ over everything else. And Freeman is a defensive coordinator. Like, he knows what he's doing. So the things that need to happen in order for this to work, right? If the hire is going to be a success, they got to trust the current staff, right? Notre Dame's got one of the best defensive back coaches in the country, and Mike Mickens. They got a rising star in Max Bullough. They got Al Washington leading the defensive line. They got dudes. I think if he's going to do anything, don't come in and overhaul stuff. Just lean on those guys. Don't fix what ain't broken, right? Notre Dame's defense was elite last season. They were number 6 in total defense, number 5 in scoring defense. If I put my notes down right. Keep that momentum. Like, don't do anything crazy. Keep Mickens involved in the passing game, right? Under Al Golden, Mickens had a huge role in their coverage schemes. If Ash tries to run things completely his way, that could certainly create some issues. They need to improve their run defense, right? We talked about that multiple times on here when we were breaking down games. That's the one area that could probably use some work. And, you know, they need to – Notre Dame needs to be more dominant up front. Ash is more known for being solid against passes or against the pass. But, I mean, who knows? It's been years, right? If Ash does come in with the mindset of maintaining and kind of doing what's already working rather than trying to put his own stamp on things, I think this hire would be fine. So I think the best way to define it is maybe high risk, high reward, right? Because this defense is already built. Like, it's a risky hire. There's no guarantee that Ash is the right fit. And if you look at his recent coaching history, there's certainly some concerns there. But at the same time, I mean, Marcus Freeman, I think at this point deserves the benefit of the doubt when it comes to hiring defensive coaches. Because I think we kind of had the same thought process with Al Golden. How long's it been since he's been in college and all this kind of stuff? You know, if you can coach ball, you can coach ball. Ash brings, you know, NFL level schemes and physicality to an already elite defense. Keep Mickens involved. Like, keep that staff that they've got involved. Help Notre Dame stay on the path to another college football playoff. Worst case scenario, like, his coaching style doesn't exactly mesh. He doesn't connect with players. Notre Dame takes a step back defensively, and that's going to be a huge problem because this team is built around this defense. So we'll see what happens with it. But Chris Ash, I think, all in all, like, risky hire, but potentially good hire. Definitely good for this time in the market, right? So one more topic for today, and let's talk attendance. Which schools dropped the lowest in attendance from 2023 to 2024? This is kind of a did you know segment, but D1 Ticker got the attendance data for the 2024 college football season. There were 5 schools whose attendance dropped more than 20% year over year. And we're going to start at number 5, right? And then we'll move down to number 1 because some of these might surprise you. Number 5 dropped 20.02% from 23 to 24. That was the Washington State Cougars. Now, the Palouse, they were used to getting games like the Apple Cup or games against USC, UCLA, Oregon, etc. This year's home schedule included Portland State, Texas Tech, San Jose State, Hawaii, Utah State, and Wyoming. That is not exactly ideal. Like, that's kind of a bad schedule even for the Mountain West. So that was not great. Number 4, the Stanford Cardinal. In their first season in the ACC, their home schedule included TCU, Cal Poly, Virginia Tech, SMU, Wake Forest, and Louisville. Clemson, Notre Dame, and Cal were all on the road. Those were like the marquee games. Those were all on the road this past year. Cardinal attendance dropped 21.63%. That is so much. They went from 33.2 thousand in 2023 to just 26,000 per game this past season. The third biggest drop was the Houston Cougars in their first season with their new head coach, Willie Fritz. The drop was 23.87%. They went from 36,000 last year to 27.4 thousand this year. And this one likely had more to do with how bad the team looked, because the home schedule was not bad. They had UNLV at home, but they got trounced. They had Rice at home, Iowa State, Utah, Kansas State, and Baylor. That's not a bad home schedule, especially for a Big 12 team. It certainly, like, Houston looked like a terrible team for a while. They did go 3-3 at home. They had some pretty good upsets. The number 2 team, the second biggest drop, based on percentage, was UTSA, the Roadrunners. They opened the season 1-4 before they steadied the ship later in AAC play. This was their first season under Coach Jeff Traylor when he didn't have Frank Harris at quarterback, and it was their first season in the AAC. They averaged 28.9 thousand fans in 2023 and only 21.1 thousand in 2024. It was not ideal. We'll say that. And I did not put their number in here. So let's see what we got. So who did they have on their schedule? UTSA. Let's go to the game log. At home, they had Kennesaw State, Houston Baptist, FAU, Memphis, North Texas, and Temple. That's not a good schedule. That is not a good schedule whatsoever. So, yeah, not great by any stretch, is what it is. The biggest drop was Florida State. They went from averaging 78.7 thousand fans in 2023 to only 53.5 thousand in 2024. That's a 32.06% drop. Now, I will admit, Doak Campbell is undergoing renovations right now. Capacity was not normal this past season, but when you go 2-10 in a season, like, they likely would have had trouble filling that place up anyway. So there were more seats available than what they had in attendance. We'll say that. There has been a ton of realignment in these conferences recently. So there are new and different matchups almost every week, but there's also more playoff games. They cost a lot more money to attend. There's way bigger matchups on TV every week. We're just going to have to pay attention to how this is going to affect live attendance going forward in the sport. If you don't give schools good matchups that they are interested in, they're not going to show up. So, let's see. Before we wrap this thing up, I did want to talk about this conspiracy theory that Cam Newton mentioned on Get Up this morning. He suggested that the Dallas Cowboys hired Brian Schottenheimer so that they could tank this season. That way they can draft Arch Manning number 1 overall next year and hire in Nick Saban to coach him. This kind of stuff is what makes football so much fun. I'm not going to crap on this at all. I love the idea. Maybe Jerry Jones is playing chess and we're all thinking in checkers, right? Maybe. But this kind of stuff makes it almost like professional wrestling, where you're trying to come up with which direction the longer storyline is actually going to go, because on its surface, like, hiring Schottenheimer does not look like it makes sense. But hey, I'm open to anything. Like, y'all give me more conspiracy theories. Next week is February. We still got a long way to go before the season starts, so we gonna need more of this stuff. All right, let's wrap this thing up. If you haven't already, remember the show is free. All I ask are 3 things. 1 is to like the video, the simple hit that thumbs up button kind of thing. 2 is subscribe to the channel or the podcast if you're listening. The more that number grows, the more that it gets us in front of more people. And that's really what I'm trying to do here, because it is a one-man show. And 3, tell your friends about it. Whether that's telling your buddy at the bar, or sharing it on social media, or whatever, or jumping in the comments, right? Jump in the comments with me, and that'll be a lot of fun as well. So I greatly appreciate those of you that are already doing those kinds of things. If you want to support the show, of course, you guys should know by now, bettingcfb.com. It's $5 a month, $50 for the year, or you can just toss in donations if you don't want to be a member. Like, you can do that. And any extra money comes in and helps me keep the gear updated and all that kind of stuff. I appreciate you guys. that are in there that are sticking with me now that the season is done, and now we're getting into bonus content season. I'm doing college basketball stuff over there. There is a link in the description to do that. Also, there's a link in the description for this too. Go subscribe to the BetUS College Football Show. We're going to have more stuff going on there. So we're in the middle of talks. We're trying to figure it all out. But go ahead and subscribe that way you don't miss anything. All right, you guys are awesome. I love you all. Thanks for taking time out to hang with me today. I really enjoy doing these things. And so right now, I'm going to see you all again right here on Monday night. I believe next week we're going to start doing some conference recaps. We're going to hand out some Winning Cures Everything awards, something along those lines. If you want to toss something to me for the show, you can hit me up on X at GaryWCE, or you can just email me. Very simple, Gary at winningcureseverything.com. Till then, let's wrap this thing up. Take care of yourself. Take care of each other. God bless college football. And hopefully, all of your tickets cash this week. Thanks for listening to Winning Cures Everything. Make sure and follow me on Twitter at GaryWCE. If you want to toss in a question, you can email me, Gary at winningcureseverything.com. Make sure and hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you next time.